And then what will happen is then I'll have the sudden realization that I don't have much time left, and it's like that scene from Jaws where you see the camera crashing in, and it's just like, shit.
I love that scene from Jaws.
Awesome.
That's, again, moving beyond the remit of this to some extent.
I know that, like you've mentioned before, that control isn't always negative.
No.
It could be used in a negative way, but could you give an example of when control isn't a negative aspect?
Yeah. So when we receive a thought, because we all do, thousands and thousands of them every day, thoughts are often helpful, unhelpful, or frankly quite benign. Okay, so when a thought crops up that is helpful, it's pushing us to take action. So, for example, fairly recently, I had a sudden thought and a rush of cortisol into my system when I looked at the clock and realised that I hadn't picked up my son from nursery. And I had a mild, immediate kind of panic. And it was like, right, you need to kind of get there because you just could, they won't leave him, but they're going to charge you this amount, all the rest of it.
Turf him out, open the door, kick him out.
And then I suddenly remembered that whilst I was originally due to pick him up that day, my partner had messaged me later on in the day to say, actually, I'm going to collect him. So whilst I had the initial thought and I got that, and it prompted me to kind of take some action. And in the end, once I kind of, my thinking brain kicked in, I realised actually it wasn't something that I needed to go and do, that she was already going to do it. But it kind of kicked it in. There are plenty of other examples that we can think of. So it's around, when I get a thought that I need to send, an important email or fill in, an important document. Sometimes what people will tend to do is go, oh, well, that's a bit scary. I don't really want to deal with that. So they'll do some piece of work
that's enjoyable.
That's more enjoyable. They'll still say, oh, well, it had to be done. Yeah. But it's kind of like, you talk to coaches and therapists and they'll show you, a diagram of kind of, things that are important and urgent and, less important, more, all of these different things. And that's fine. I don't really want to get into that stuff and the whole coaching side. But the bottom line is a thought crops up. We can identify if it's helpful and we can take action in service of it. But we might get a thought that crops up that's unhelpful and we can choose our response to that unhelpful thought. And we go back to the locking of the front door. Thought crops up, have I locked the front door when I'm sat in the car? Well, I know I've locked it. Absolutely certain I've locked it. But there's that kind of niggling away. And it's at that point, well, that's an unhelpful thought. Right, I'm going to go on. I'm going to go. Job's good.
Loads of times where I've been doing work and I might have 3 or 4 tasks and I've picked the task that is the one that's not going to cause me the most burden. But I know the one that's the most burden is the one that probably needs to be done now.
Yeah.
And then what will happen is then I'll have the sudden realization that I don't have much time left, and it's like that scene from Jaws where you see the camera crashing in and it's just like, shit.
I love that scene from Jaws.
With
Rob Shot, because they had it on a dolly, didn't they? So they were sort of zooming it as they were moving it in.
Fantastic,
absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
But it is that moment of realization, and you go, and as soon as it happens, I instantly do 2 things. I say the word shit, and then instantly you pillock or you idiot, because I knew that this procrastination of not doing it would lead to this. It's almost like people say, oh, in hindsight. Well, I had hindsight. I knew when I was going to do it that this was going to be a problem, but I didn't want to tackle it then.
Yeah. And that's absolutely true. But again, there's only so much that we can do around that. Again, it's, by cultivating more awareness of those thoughts and recognizing the things that we tend to procrastinate about and, writing those down so that they're a bit more in the forefront of our minds of the things that we tend to procrastinate about. I use something called the ACT matrix, which I may do a talk about at some point in time. But the ACT matrix is essentially a piece of paper with a cross, so 2 lines, and that creates for you essentially 4 segments. And in those segments, you write down certain things that are, about what's important to you, actions that you want to take in service of what's important to you, but also the stuff that kind of holds you back from doing what's important to you. And recognizing those, actually writing them down and having a literal physical representation of those things is so good at kicking you into action to actually support you in making sure that you tackle those. So that's something I've actually got on a whiteboard in my office now, and I kind of write stuff down on it when I recognise a particular trait or something that I've failed to do. It's pretty cool.